Good evening. I'd like to call the Monday, August 17th Speedway Redevelopment Commission meeting to order. We'll begin by introductions of the members. To my right is member Gordon Rundle. To my left is member Rhonda Schwartz. To Rhonda's left is our newest member, Barry Gardner. Barry, congratulations and welcome aboard.
Thank you.
To his left is the Speedway Schools representative, Dr. Terry Reed. And sitting in the audience is our executive assistant, Mr. Tim Ramian. And reporting from the podium tonight will be the executive director, Mr. Tim Gropp. And not present tonight is Jennifer Miller. Would like to congratulate her on the birth of her new baby girl. We do have a quorum, and we will proceed with the meeting. There's no public in attendance this evening, so we will skip past the public comment. Prior to the meeting minutes for the executive session and the regular sessions held on July 20th and July 29th were previously distributed. Unless there are any edits or corrections, we'll approve those with consent. Hearing no edits or corrections, we will approve that. And we will move on to item number 5, that is the approval of claims and expenses. Tim, would you like to explain that for us?
A couple things on finances here. Not much on the claim docket. The only kind of out of a normal one is the no trespassing signs, which we used to put up around the Lenore property. And that had to deal with people kind of dumping things on the property. So somebody pulled one of the signs up and destroyed it this weekend. So it's going well. Beyond that, there's two transactions at the bottom that were errors. Those are left on for documenting the wastewater operating transfers. Those have no impact on any of our finances. Our account numbers just happen to be within one digit in the internal system, so they accidentally got money into our account, so those were transferred over. Just want to make you aware there was no expenses. We're not paying the wastewater plant a bunch of money for any particular reason. So as far as the budget versus actual, everything's pretty well in line. We have not been spending a lot, just waiting to figure out our cash flow and make sure everything's going to be okay. I did mention prior to the meeting that there's a couple line items that look like not much has been spent. We had been utilizing a kind of a town hall credit card, and some of those expenses have been allocated to different budgets, so we're trying to reconcile all that. So this might change a little bit when we figure all that out, but they're going to a new commercial credit system, and the SRC will have their own credit moving forward, which will be appreciated for tracking. Everything else is doing fine.
Any additional questions or concerns for Mr. Gropp in regards to the expenses or approval of claims? I'd entertain a motion to approve the claims as submitted.
I'll make a motion to approve the claims as submitted.
Second.
And say aye if you are in favor of the approval of the claims.
Aye.
Aye.
And aye. The claims are approved 4-0. Moving on to item number 6, the director's report.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. The first thing I'd like to discuss this evening is our tax collections from the spring, what was the spring draw. Just to refresh everyone's memory, during COVID-19, the original tax date in June was pushed, or April was pushed back. Taxes weren't due till July. We did receive a tax draw as normal in June for our July payments, which were due. We drew about $516,000 at that time. That, along with cash that we had on hand, we were able to pay all of our July bond payments without having to get creative. After that, the July deadline, Marion County actually had us request in advance. The way they booked it, even though it was technically the spring draw, they had us request an advance of our fall draw. Which didn't make a lot of sense, but we went ahead and did that. We actually did very well versus what we were expecting this year, so we are right around 50%, which we should be. Typically, you're just a hair over in the spring draw. Some people pay in advance, so we were pleased with the advance that we were getting. It should keep us on target for our fall draw to be able to pay all our bonds as well. So right now, our TIF account is right in line with what our projections were at the end of 2019, within a little bit. There's a couple caveats to that, but we were pleased with that, and we appreciate everyone's prompt payments. So, any questions on that aspect? Okay. So they really distributed just about everything that was coming to us. They didn't hold back some. There's just the 2015 B bond. There was a appeal, and then there had been some inconsistency there, so they held back a little bit till that all got sorted out. But that should work out by the end of the year. Project-wise, 4501 West 16th Street. We've had the billboard lawsuit ongoing all this year. We actually had our hearing in front of the judge. He took everything under advisement, and we should know whether or not we got summary judgment or the other defendant has summary judgment within the next 30 days. So we'll report back to you on the status of the billboard out across from Gate 2. 1300 block, we continue to make progress on that project. It's going a little slower than anticipated, just complicated figuring out the finances of both sides and what we can and can't do. I will tell you that based on the proposal from the developer, as we went back and looked at it and started talking about the needs and wants of both sides, we are preferring to go to more of a traditional economic development bond process versus some of the other routes that we might be able to take. We're still evaluating that. That would end up being, to make that process work, it'd be a developer bond. So the developer is looking to see if they're able to finance that through their banking route and how that would look. So as we're doing all that due diligence, that would just be a cleaner, more traditional route to do this. There wouldn't be any master lease payments or anything like that. So we'll keep you posted as that moves along and let you know if anything changes. All the other details we seem to be in line with. I had sat down with the developer and we had kind of had our list of clarifications, and everything seems to be that we're speaking the same language as we draft the agreements. So it's just going to take us a little bit longer. Hopefully by our next meeting we should have the agreements in front of you ready to consider. Also on the 1300 block, you have the demo contracts before you. We'll address those in a minute. We have an agreement to do the asbestos on that demo as well with Delta Services. Just wanted to make sure everybody knew that. 16th and Main, the engineering scope is done for that improvements along in front of USAC and the Bunch building from 16th Street to Cord. We don't really have a timeline on it from there. We still have to sit down with those businesses and make sure they're okay with everything, some other decisions. That's a project that wasn't necessarily a high priority once everything hit with the finances and COVID-19. So the good news is the engineering's finally completed and we're ready to go. It's just timing of when we want to do that project. So I just wanted you guys to be aware that was completed. Let's see, Wilshaw, just going through the town in my head. The Wilshaw project, we'll hopefully have some updates for everybody real soon. As we've mentioned, Loftus Robinson is in negotiations with a potential partner to take over a majority of the construction and operating of that project. Things are progressing well. There is a drafted partnership agreement. They're working on a hotel operating agreement. Once that's all completed, there's still a step of coming back to the town to kind of look at the deal and make any changes we need on that side. Then there will be a financial review beyond that. So there's still a lot of due diligence steps to make it there, but everything seems to be progressing fairly well. With that said, I just want to kind of lay the expectation down that with the continued due diligence and us getting further into the fall, my anticipation is we really wouldn't start construction again until probably the spring. Just by the time we get all the paperwork done and all the documents signed, they're engineering out and recosting some of this, then you'd have to get all those contractors mobilized, and that would happen right around winter time, which is not a good time to mobilize contractors due to additional costs. So there are plans to kind of clean up the site prior this fall, redo the fencing, put a banner around it, clean up some of the material, all that kind of good stuff. But I just want everyone's expectation to kind of look towards the spring for when they'd actually start construction again. So we'll keep you posted. If things pan out a little better, there's a chance they could get back on site. They obviously will do that, but they still have to go out and get financing and everything else, so a lot to do. Out on the town hall is progressing nicely as well. We've had a few change orders on there, but nothing major. We're having a lot of internal discussions on the logistics, things that aren't covered in the overall project that'll have to be covered from the town side. We are still on track to take that building over early December. I think December 8th is the official date, somewhere in there. From that point, we may have an open house for the public, but we will then take our time. We'll have a lot of work to do from the time we take the building over, moving furniture in, figuring out logistics, figuring out key fobs, operations, all that. So we don't have an exact timeline, but I anticipate that building being functional to the public early in 2021. And then heading out to 2500 Founders Square. We're just kind of struggling to get over the finish line on that one. Some of the subcontractors and logistics just aren't lining up real well. We continue to wait for IPL to move some poles out of the way and remove some poles so we can get some of the work done. They are working on concrete now on the curbing and sidewalks. We do expect to have a functional stoplight middle this week. It's projected for Wednesday to be able to open that intersection. There will still be some lane restrictions due to concrete work that needs to be done, but there were two issues. IPL needed to hook up the electric, that got done, and Indianapolis will be bringing out the equipment to sync the lights with Crawfordsville and high school with 25th and high school. So that's scheduled to be on Wednesday. The weather looks good. And if all goes well, we will open that intersection immediately. Beyond that, we are waiting on the final design and a product to be delivered on the pond liner, because that's receiving water from the wellhead protection area. We had an additional cost of having to put in either a very expensive specialized clay liner or a synthetic liner. So we're working on the synthetic liner, but we have to work out those details. That's caused some of the delay as well. We're anxious to get that switched over to the retention pond so that we can finish a lot of the work on site. But until we have that liner in there, we can't switch over, so it's really holding up the process as well. So hopefully in the next few weeks, it looks like we have a couple good weeks of weather here, and we can get a lot of this finished up and ready to go.
Are there still lane restrictions on high school?
Yes, there will still be lane restrictions even when we turn the light on. Obviously, we won't have the Founders Square part open, so it'll still function as a three-way. But there are still going to be lane restrictions because they have to come in and do some curbing and handicap ramps and things like that. So as those get done, they'll pull those away. But they have most everything else done. They've been able to put the sensors in, and I think we're pretty ready to go on the intersection.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Everybody good? Thanks, Tim. Appreciate that report. Moving on to item number 7, new business. The approval of the demolition contract for 1330 Main Street, which is currently the Bell Building. Want to speak to that, Tim?
Yeah, so as we just finished with, we're making progress on the redevelopment of 1300 block. Bell Helmets is getting ready to move to a new space in the next 30 days or so on Main Street. I'll let them make their announcement. But that will open up that building that allow us to do the last demo necessary to move that project forward. So with that, we decided to go ahead and get that process started. We requested quotes from 3 companies, Casey Bertram, Denny Companies, and Ray's Demolition. All 3 came back with responsive quotes for the project. We did do a couple follow-up calls to clarify on the Rays, just to make sure that the water line, what we've been doing on water lines on the demo so far is the main's actually on the east side of Main Street, which you're technically, when you demo, you're supposed to take it back to the main. Not knowing where we're going to need water lines for the new project, we've cut them off on the west side. So part of the scope of the new project is any water lines not needed need to be taken back to the main, but we only wanted to tear up Main one time instead of every individual demo. So making sure apples to apples that everyone quoted it to the west side. And then also that protective fencing, which is required by this Speedway code enforcement, was also included in that. Everything seemed to check out. These are the 3 quotes before you, and I would recommend taking the low quote, which is Ray's Demolition.
Does anyone have any questions?
When do we anticipate the demo happening?
Good question. So, again, Bell is probably going to move over sometime I'll say mid-September, because nothing goes quite as planned, right? Then we will go in, do our asbestos report, and then it's usually about 30 days for disconnects and IDEM review and all that good stuff. So my assumption would be the actual demolition would be early October, early to mid-October.
Any additional questions? I'll entertain a motion for the approval of Ray's Demolition as the apparent low bidder for the demolition contract at 1330 Main Street.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve the demolition contract for 1330 Main Street to Ray's Demolition.
And I'll second the motion.
All in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 All opposed? None. And I will be abstaining as I am employed by one of the bidding contractors. So the motion passes 3-0 with 1 abstention. Thank you. Additional item for new business is the consideration of amendment to purchase agreement with regards to Allison Transmission.
I'll apologize to the SRC. This came to you fairly late in the day. It is kept pretty simple. So Allison Transmission has a lot going on right now. We're doing a lot of projects. One thing they had asked us for is, several years back, we had sold 2 properties to them in a purchase agreement that are across the street from their world headquarters. So one of them is an acre, 1.1 acres, if you give or take a little bit, right behind Sarah Fisher Karting. The other one is approximately an acre, which is across the street from that, next to our Prax Hair environmental mound. Part of that purchase agreement allowed us what's called a right of reversion, which basically says at any time when this contract's done, we have a right to purchase it back from you if it hasn't been developed for the purchase price that you paid for us. They do pay us an annual pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes. The sale purchase was contingent on them paying us what the value would be if it was developed. They are smaller lots, but the idea was they wanted to keep the front of their world headquarters looking nice, and they were concerned about some of the uses that could go in on about an acre weren't necessarily what they wanted across from their headquarters. So they agreed to purchase the property, then pay a pilot to us. There's about a year. They've been able to extend this contract for a couple of years now. There's one more year they could extend it. They came back and they're fine with continuing the pilot, but they asked us to remove the right of reversion. They want to know that clawback's not hanging over their head. They've looked at some ideas on those properties. There's a day they might actually build something or sell it for the right use, but they just didn't want us to come back in and take it back and risk us selling it to, for lack of better examples, a gas station or something like that. So in exchange, as we were looking into an amendment to this agreement, there was a little chunk on the western side that would allow the B&O expansion that's happening to run a little smoother. Allison Transmission has been fantastic partners on the B&O Trail and the expansion down to Indianapolis. And the B&O Trail has respected all their wishes. As the town was looking at the design, we noticed that there was a right-hand turn that was in there that was kind of clunky. Our right-of-way went straight out to Allison Way, and then they were using the sidewalk down. We had gone back as part of this and said, could you sell us just a little chunk? It's about 580 square feet that would allow that trail to bend down in a more natural curve to the corner. Where it would cross Allison Way is just simply too close to the intersection, so they're going to use the actual intersection as the crossing there. So what we've done on the amendment, or the Exhibit A, is that chunk of land that we're asking. It really doesn't affect any harm to Allison Transmission. It's a, do you have it, Gordon?
I don't think I do.
Here, I got an extra copy for you.
Oh,
Gordon's got it. What it does, it's really
Oh, there
not
it is.
useful
It's
to
just
Allison. There's no way to have a curb cut onto Allison Way. It's too close to the intersection. It's in the blind spot radius. At most, it'd be a little landscaping or a parking space or two. So what we've asked in exchange for terminating the right of reversion is allowing us to deed back that chunk. So it would be on the Speedway trails to actually do the engineering and the replatting and all that. There would be no cost to the SRC, but from a town perspective, this makes a lot more sense to have the B&O trail kind of curve down to that edge. As I mentioned, we just received this afternoon from Mr. Clutter. It looks to be in line. The one thing that was not in there was some discussion with the SRC about a right of first refusal. We did not include that. Mr. Clutter had a few questions on that. Right of first refusal in some ways feels like the right of reversion. That's not quite the same thing, so he wasn't sure if we actually wanted that in there or not. I said I'd leave it up to the Redevelopment Commission this evening to decide if we wanted to add that revision or not. And from there, if you're okay with the amendments, my request is to have a motion to approve in substantial form and allow Mr. Duncan and myself to finish the negotiation with Allison Transmission on this deal.
I entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we approve the amendment to the purchase agreement in substantial form and authorize the president and executive director to negotiate and execute any final documents.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor, say
Could
aye.
we have quick clarification?
Yeah.
What is your stance on wanting the right of first refusal or not?
Is it a sticking point that's gonna,
Our feeling was that, in a right of first refusal, if they decide they want, A, Allison's only going to sell it to somebody they want to build
Yes.
across from them. And B, that means that we'd have to pay whatever that person's paying. So I don't see a situation where we would necessarily want to step in and cancel a deal that Allison Transmission has brokered. So
Yeah.
in my opinion, I would not include it.
yeah, to your point earlier, it is the doorstep of their world headquarters.
Correct.
I agree, but a right of first refusal is based on their we
Their
don't
market
have to
price.
accept their price. We would just have the right to purchase it at their price.
At their
And if we
price.
didn't want it at that price, then they could.
Correct. They'd simply, all that's really
It's not
saying is they'd
forcing
have to
it.
come to us and say, look, we're gonna build X on this side, we're gonna sell this property to X to build something. Do you guys, but you have a right of first refusal, so do you wanna buy it? Here's our purchase agreement with these guys, so this is what you'd have to buy it for. And so it'd be a check on the project to say, yeah, we're okay with that project or not. So, I mean, it would be, I don't know, to your point, I don't know if that is point of contention or not.
In the conversation with them, was that, did it come up at all?
It did
So
not come
Bob
up.
had obviously
Yeah,
not included it in the original draft here.
correct. Well, we just felt like, the right of reversion basically says we can go out and buy it for what we sold it to you for, so,
Right, but the right of first refusal is based on, is not based on a predetermined cost.
correct. It's based on the market. I'm fine either way, to be honest. I think Allison has sat on it for this long and is willing to continue to do the pilot in that spot, so,
Right, and how much are they paying per year in taxes on that?
It's in-
Approximately?
It's in the.
Yeah.
yeah.
Here you go.
It's quite a bit.
It is,
Yeah.
it totals just around $40,000
Yeah.
a year for the two sites.
reduction of the pilot is in relation to the amount of square
Right.
footage that we're
Yeah,
taking
square
out.
footage that we're taking,
So,
small reduction.
is,
And there's still zoning, I mean, it's still in speed zone 1, there's still zoning restrictions. So the question becomes, how much does the town want to monitor what's being built on that site?
I mean, we can still vote on this, and they're gonna negotiate, it's not an approval. at
Correct,
this
and we can
point.
but as part of the motion, we can add an amendment, and we can adjust this to add that portion if you'd like to start with it in there.
I think it'd be a good discussion with them.
if,
during the negotiation
if
process.
they agree to it without any hesitation, then
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But I don't know that will be the case.
Sure. So you want us to add it for the initial,
Yeah, I think so. I
okay?
think so. At least have the conversation with them, see how they respond.
Okay.
Obviously, don't want it to sour any part of the deal, but
Right, yeah.
Okay, we'll make that change prior to moving forward. Yes.
yeah, there's been a motion and a second, and we'll continue with that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And no abstentions. The consideration passes 4-0 to the motion. And moving on to the third item of new business, approval for engineering contract for 4940 Crawfordsville Road.
Yes, so this is the Zellman property, former Zellman, Bernard Zellman property, which is adjacent to Lot 2 in between Pam's Pit Stop Liquor and the new lot at Gate 1. We have been leasing this property for 3.5 years, awaiting a no further action letter from IDEM that has been received. There was some consideration of assigning this over to IMS, and they have passed on that offer, so we need to move forward with the purchase per our agreement. That should happen in the next couple weeks. With that being said, the lot right now is gravel with some temporary board cabling that we put up to keep people out. Depending on what our not knowing what the long-term is on this property, we are currently engineering the lot for the land swap to deal with the overflow of the Wilshaw project that was required per the agreement. This lot was originally tied up for that purpose. So if we're engineering that lot, it would make some sense to go ahead and engineer this lot, so when we bid out, we could bid them out and hopefully get a little economies of scale if we're gonna do improvements. From that point, if it's engineered, we can always scale back if we decide, we're not sure exactly what our long-term plan is here. We could scale back the bidding documents, we could take out pavement, we could keep it stone for now, things like that, but I would recommend that we at least go ahead with the engineering, as I don't see us doing anything else with the lot in the near future. I think we're gonna at least hold this and be parking cars on it for the next couple of years. So if that's the case, we should at least clean up the lot a little bit.
Any additional questions? Entertain a motion for the approval of the engineering contract for 4940 Crawfordsville Road.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the engineering contract for 4940 Crawfordsville Road.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 4-0. And moving on to our last item of new business, it is Resolution 2020-04, resolution concerning the acquisition of real property.
Yeah, I apologize, this was a late addition as well. So we have been leasing a property on Crawfordsville Road, 5242 Crawfordsville Road, storing furniture for our new town hall project. We do, as part of that lease agreement, we have the ability to, negotiate purchase. We have a right of first refusal on that one. However, as we've gone along, it's become clear to us, just with the condition of the building, the overall look in that block, that it would be advantageous to us to go ahead and try to negotiate the purchase of that property. This resolution would allow us to move forward with the state mandated process that we have to follow to do that, which includes the average of 2 appraisals, and so that's what we're looking for. If that is the direction the SRC would like to go, that block has been a discussion for quite some time. Now that we have solidified our spring draw and our cash flow seems to be a little more on target with what we were expecting, this would be a right time to go ahead and move forward. So if we approve this tonight, I'd probably, depending on how negotiations with the current owners go, I could bring something back for your approval at the next meeting, which would have us close sometime in October or November. Our lease, just for reference, is good through January 15th of 2021.
Any additional questions for Mr. Gropp in regards to this resolution?
No, sir.
All good. We'll entertain a motion on the resolution 2020-04 concerning the acquisition of real property.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Resolution 2020-04, the resolution concerning the acquisition of real property.
Second.
With the motion and the second, move to a vote. And all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes 4-0.
Just a note on that, as we learned with the Cord Street property we tried to acquire last year, it's not a done deal till you can agree upon a price. So this is just the start of the process.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Appreciate those updates on the new business, Tim. And moving on to item number 8, old business. Update on the 2021 operating budget.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this back to the Redevelopment Commission tonight. We looked at this at our last meeting. Since that time, I was able to sit down with Carlos and Jacob to discuss kind of the plans on the town, where they're heading, some of the different projects for next year. And then I was able to present at budget hearings last week with the town council for feedback. We had a few adjustments that were made, and I've had time to sit and look at it a little bit more. I wanted to bring those back to you. We won't do a formal approval of this until the town has solidified some of their budget items, as far as raises, insurance costs, and all that good stuff. So they're working through that process now, but I wanted to keep you up to date. The main changes were in FF&E under office supplies. I had increased that a little bit. Just all the little things moving into this new building seemed to get a little overwhelming, so we bumped that up even more, just to provide our portion of making sure the move is well done and we're able to operate when we open those doors. That'll probably be a multi-year project to get that place fully furnished and the way we like it, but I did not bump that up enough, and after we talked, it was probably a good idea to put a little more money in there. Nothing overwhelming, but beyond that, I did drop the financial professional services a little bit more. Just looking over the last 3 years, we've not really come close most of our financial service dollars are paid for out of project funds through the TIF. We do have instances where we're rerunning some numbers for Wilshaw, things like that come up. We have our monthly TIF cash flow report, so there is some expense there, but not nearly the numbers that we had in there. So I brought that down a little bit to make up for the FF&E. And I think the only other major one was we're still working on the let me find it here, rent for moving into the office rent. So we are a little bit low what we had in there. I had us in at about $1,500 a month. We bumped it up to $2,000 a month. Just, we're still working out details on what those costs are going to be. So that number's still fluctuating a little bit. We're obviously going to pay our share, of our office space plus some common area to help offset the cost of the town. So all that with some of the other reductions we kind of offset. We're still about a little over 7% drop, which is where we were on the original proposal, just in different categories. So still reducing our overall budget about $33,000, just in a couple different categories than I presented last time. So I wanted you to be aware of that. Happy to take any feedback on that.
Observations or comments?
No, appreciate the information.
All right.
Yeah, thanks for putting that together and continuing to update it. It's nice to have that at our fingertips, for sure.
Absolutely.
With that, does anybody have any additional comments or reports they'd like to make?
Not tonight.
Yeah, there's a race this
Yeah.
weekend. Be able to watch that live and on TV.
There's a band at Daredevil on Carb Night. It was a band that was scheduled for Carb Night that then lost their gig. So, if you're looking for something to do on Carb Night, go out to Daredevil. And I think it's like yacht rock. It's not my usual music, but apparently the band's really good. I guess they played our parks last year. So
Great.
some free music on Friday night, and should be a great race.
Yeah. In line with that, continue to support the local Speedway businesses throughout the community, and we appreciate it. Hearing no additional information, we'll adjourn the meeting with consent.